And Judge, I will let you take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gerald Pratt. I will be the presiding judge for this round. So we'd like to have everybody's camera on right now so we can do a conflicts check. Our scoring panelists are Charlene Hunter, Holly Ryan, and Harry Klein, and they will be looking at everyone's name and your cameras to make sure that we don't have any conflict where they know someone as a friend or a relative. So we'll give them a few seconds to do that. And scoring panelists, if you don't see any conflict, if you let me know, then we can proceed.
Holly Ryan, no conflicts.
No conflict here either.
No conflicts, Judge.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Ham, we have no conflicts here. We will wait until you get the clear go ahead from the other courtrooms.
Thank you very much.
And for all of the participants and the witnesses and the scorekeepers, what we're going to do is we're going to let the scoring, I will have my video on the whole time. And we will let the scoring panelists keep their video on during opening statements and closing arguments. So you'll have somebody to talk to other than just me. But during witness exams, they will turn their cameras off so it's not a distraction.
Judge, we have been cleared for conflicts.
Great, great. Well, let's start. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have each team introduce yourselves, all of your members, your attorneys, your witnesses, and your timekeepers. And I understand that Team Daryl is the plaintiff. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And would you all like to introduce yourselves, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Mix Lee Kenny. I use they, them pronouns. And today, along with my co-counsel, we will be representing Mr. Dakota Weirs in the case of Dakota Weirs versus Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. Today, I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams, and giving the closing argument. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Skylar Walta. I use she, her pronouns, and today I'll be conducting the direct examination of Carson Durst and the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ms. Morgan Taylor. I use she, her pronouns, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Mr. Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Ms. Blake Doncourt, as well as performing the opening arguments. Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Mr. Nathan Trong. I use he, him pronouns, and today I am Dakota Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Mr. JT Timmers. I use he, him pronouns, and today I am Carson Durst.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ms. Grace Trembath. I use she, her pronouns, and today I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
And may we have permission for our timekeeper to introduce herself?
Yes.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Miss Leah Blake. I use she, her pronouns, and today I am the plaintiff, Daryl timekeeper.
Thank you very much. For the defense, I understand Team Pam is the defense. Would you introduce yourselves, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Lydia Brisky, and I, alongside my co-counsel, represent the defense.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ainsley Bidgood, and I will be presenting the opening statement.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Emma Senishin, and I will be making the closing argument.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Julie Perry, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Good morning. My name is Kate Sutherland, and I'm Skylar Weirs.
Good morning. My name is Saffron Bennett Spurlock, and I am Blake Doncourt.
And your timekeeper?
Good morning. My name is Lucille Walker, and I will be Team Pam's timekeeper.
Okay, did we get everyone on your team?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. I'd like to, well, thank you to all the counsel and all the witnesses and the timekeepers. For the timekeepers, I have a request, and that is, I find it helpful when you're putting in the chat how much time is left, if you indicate what it's for. So for example, when there are witness exams going on, I find it helpful to see 10 minutes left in plaintiff's direct exam, or 10 minutes left in plaintiff's cross exam. It just helps me. If you don't remember that, it's okay. We'll get through it. But if you can remember that, I find it helpful.
Your Honor, I do have time cards. If you'd like that, I have 10 minutes to hold up for the plaintiff when they're conducting direct or cross examinations. Would that be good for you as well? Or do you prefer me to just send it into the chat?
Well, I would, that's a great question. What I think is really helpful is to have it in the chat, and I would just leave it in the chat until you get down to the close to the end. So we had a timekeeper yesterday, and I was watching the chat, and we could see 10 minutes, and that's fine, and then we get down to 5 minutes and 4 and 3. When we got down to seconds, like 10 seconds left, the timekeeper was doing this. And I found that helpful. I think it might have helped the participants as well. So I wouldn't really use the cards until you get close to the end. Is that okay? All right. Oh, good. Well, let's do some pretrial matters. Let me go through my checklist. Is each side, let me ask this, plaintiff, Team Daryl, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
And for the defense, Team Pam, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We have your team rosters. They were provided to us by the courtroom monitor, Ms. Ham. So we already have those. My understanding is that each team has consented to this session being recorded and being live streamed through YouTube. If anybody has an objection to that, please speak up now. Hearing no objections, I'll proceed. There will be no recesses during this session unless there's a health emergency. If there is some health emergency, feel free to raise your hand or speak up or put it in the chat, whatever is most effective. But absent any health emergency, there won't be any recesses. We've already done our conflicts check, and that was good. The time requirements are very important, and they will be strictly enforced. I don't like to be rude, but sometimes I have to be rude and say, sorry, counsel, your time has expired. So please be cognizant of the time limits and please abide by them. If you don't, it will be reflected in the scoring for that performance. I'd like to swear in all of the participants. We'll start with the counsel. Counsel, if you would all raise your right hands. And if you have turn your microphones on, get off of mute so you can respond. And this is the oath for the counsel. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor.
Thank you. Witnesses, if you would please unmute and raise your right hands. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures for the mock trial?
Yes,
Your Honor.
Thank you. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Please unmute. Scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Does the plaintiff have any pretrial matters?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff has several. May we proceed?
Yes.
First, we'd like to address a few more things regarding timing. We understand that you would prefer the times to be put in the chat, and we would be happy to comply with that. Would you allow us at 5 minutes to hold times up especially for openings and closings, so that those standing further back can see the times easier.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. And then we would
And
also,
the defense is allowed to do the same. It'll be the same for both sides.
thank you, Your Honor. And we would also ask that only the timer for the side that is currently going post their times in the chat, so that we don't have two timers posting times in the chat and have a lot going on for those watching on screen. And if there's a dispute, the timers handle it or bring it up, of course.
And how does the defense feel about that?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll do it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. And we would also ask that we reserve any time at the end of our closing argument for rebuttal.
Yes, you can do that, and I will ask at the time you do closings. I'll ask if you want to reserve time and how much.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And then we would also ask that the crossing attorney keep their camera on throughout the entire direct examination, so that objections will be hopefully more efficient.
That sounds good. Defense, any position on that?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor, just a few more. And then due to our virtual background, we would ask how you would prefer us to handle sharing exhibits and publishing to the jury.
You can share screen.
And in the case that we share screen, we would ask that an exhibit isn't published to the jury until counsel has specifically asked for it to be published. And we just assume the jury has not seen it, even though it is screen shared.
Yeah, that's correct. And, it's a little awkward doing it remotely by Zoom. But I think the appropriate procedure would be I think you can share screen when you're addressing the exhibit with a witness. And then once it's admitted, if it's admitted, you can ask to publish it to the jury. Of course, the scoring panelists are going to be able to see it when you're sharing screen with the witness. So this is a little bit different than real life, but I think that makes more sense than talking about exhibits that nobody sees. So you can share screen when you're addressing an exhibit with a witness, but then the procedure is to offer it into evidence. And if it's admitted, then you can ask to publish it to the jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
And then we would ask that for technical difficulties, time for both sides be paused.
Yes. That's
and, and finally, we would ask that since we're conducting this trial virtually, any and all of us have the option to remain seated or stand as works best for us in our space.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's appropriate. You can remain seated if you wish. In real life, in a real courtroom, not doing this remotely, I would require you to stand. But with this format, I think it's appropriate to either stand or sit, whichever you're more comfortable with.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. That concludes the plaintiff's preliminary matters.
Okay, defense, do you have any pretrial matters?
No, the defense doesn't have any preliminary matters at this time.
All right, well, thank you both. We'll proceed with opening statements. Each side gets 5 minutes for their opening. Plaintiff, we'll start with yours.
Hello, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
How would you go about turning green into gold? Lush fertilizer will stop at nothing in the pursuit of their gold, no matter who is in their way. A young man's future has been stolen from him by an avaricious corporation that is blinded by green, the hunt for money masked behind the facade of environmentalism. My co-counsel and I have seen the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, express his newfound struggles, and today we will share those struggles with you. Members of the jury, I ask you to listen to Mr. Weirs' experiences, and you will see the consequences of Lush fertilizer trying to turn green into gold. They saw Drufo as their golden goose and didn't think about the lives that would be taken in pursuit of their green future. Lush didn't consider Dakota and possibly countless others whose lives will never be the same. We will begin our case by calling Dakota Weirs to the stand, where he will share with you his love for the outdoors and playing piano. You will learn that those passions were stolen from him by non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and he will describe the physical and mental pain he suffers day after day, and the emotional losses he continues to endure. Mr. Weirs will then describe his interactions with Lush fertilizer and will detail his suspicions of a lurking danger, followed by his realization that Drufo, a vital ingredient used in Lush products, is correlated to his condition, despite the lack of a proper warning label. We will then call Carson Durst to testify to his involvement with Lush fertilizer. Through his testimony, you will learn how Lush ignored carcinogenic properties of Drufo and how the company chose to not properly test it, despite being warned about its harmful effects. He will tell you about how Drufo was Lush's golden goose and the perfect opportunity to turn green into gold. Finally, Dr. Casey Rogers will take the stand and speak about the causal links between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, using her expertise to explain a study that Lush neglected to replicate. She will testify to the fact that Lush's label does not provide a sufficient warning about the consequences of working with Drufo, and how Lush, an international corporation, disregarded their responsibility to adequately warn customers. The defense will call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand to claim Drufo's safety by attempting to discredit Dr. Rogers. But Dr. Williams will fail to explain why Lush didn't see fit to replicate Dr. Rogers' study or conduct a new one of their own. Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush, will also testify and will aim to coerce you into thinking she is a humanitarian who truly cares about the environment, but will not explain why Lush refuses to eliminate all forms of carcinogenic risk by baking the fertilizer. Blake Doncourt will tell you she wants a green future, but won't tell you of how that green is really just Lush lining its pockets. The defense will then call upon Skylar Weirs to testify against their own twin and use their questionable research to discredit Dakota's pain. We, pursuant to instruction number 1, and as the representatives of the plaintiff, have the burden of proof today. We must prove our case by a preponderance of the evidence, which simply means to prove that something is more probably true than not. Pursuant to jury instruction number 2, we must show this negligence by proving 4 things. First, that Lush fertilizer manufactured a chemical product containing Drufo. Second, that they failed to reasonably prevent risk to those using the product in the expected manner. 3, that Dakota Weirs used Drufo in that expected manner. And 4, Mr. Weirs has damages caused by Drufo, and therefore by the defendant, Lush Fertilizer. The defense will try to convince you that Lush was perfectly responsible in testing and sufficiently warning users, but Mr. Durst will testify to how Lush disregards safety concerns and didn't even bother to research further, despite inconclusive evidence, breaching their duty as a company. Dr. Rogers will explain both the link between non-Hodgkin lymphoma and Drufo and the duty Lush has to investigate any potential dangers. And finally, Mr. Weirs will express the damages he has incurred due to Lush's negligence and irresponsible conduct. These damages are non-economic and include physical and mental suffering, emotional trauma, and impairment of quality of life. Pursuant to the pretrial ruling of Judge Staub, the amount for these damages will be determined here, and Dakota will testify that these damages are worth $1,000 a day for the estimated lifetime he has lost, 60 more years. This amount totals to $21.9 million. At the culmination of this trial, my co-counsel, Mix Kenny, will ask you to find Lush Fertilizer liable as a result of their negligence through their failure to properly test Drufo, the resulting tragedy of a young musician's existence torn to pieces, and their relentless attempts to turn some green grass into a golden opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Opening statement for the defense.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Members of the jury, we are here today because Lush Fertilizer is being wrongfully sued by Dakota Weirs. They claim that a compound in Lush's fertilizer, Drufo, caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but the facts and evidence presented today will show that this is simply not the case. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very emotional case, but it is your job to consider the facts and evidence. Today, you will hear the plaintiff present the wrong science and accuse the wrong defendant. So you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, must give the right answer. Wrong science, wrong defendant, right answer. The plaintiff will present science in an effort to support their claim that Drufo causes cancer. Their claim entirely depends on an inconclusive study conducted by Casey Rogers. Today, you will hear Casey Rogers herself testify that this study has never been replicated, nor has it been peer-reviewed. Ladies and gentlemen, we have no way of knowing whether the same conclusions would be reached if this study were replicated. For all we know, she got lucky. That's the wrong science. Today, you will hear my co-counsel and I present to you the right science. You will hear from Dr. Williams, who will testify that her labs found no evidence that suggested that the use of Drufo causes cancer. You will also hear from Skylar Weirs, who will testify to Drufo containing no carcinogenic ingredients and that there are no credible studies showing a direct correlation between Drufo and cancer. Finally, Blake Doncourt will testify to Lush taking numerous safety tests and taking all necessary precautions to eliminate reasonable risk. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the right science. Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush, will try to claim that Lush could have done more to ensure the safety of its users. They will also try to claim that Lush manipulated data and failed to evaluate all sources of evidence. But you will see today that this is simply not true. Lush Fertilizer used the right science in all steps of the production of Drufo. They conducted numerous safety tests and put all necessary recommendations on packaging. As well as making claims based on the wrong science, Dakota Weirs is suing the wrong defendant. There is an array of unaccounted for factors. Today, you will hear Dakota testify to using many different products. We can't even be sure that a fertilizer is at fault. For all we know, it could have been a household cleaning product. By the end of today's trial, it will be apparent that the plaintiff has not met their burden of proof. They must prove by a preponderance of the evidence every element of the claim of negligence. Through our science, it will be clear that Lush exercised reasonable care to prevent its user from an unreasonable risk of harm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very emotional case, but it is your job to consider the facts and evidence. Today, you will hear the plaintiff present the wrong science and accuse the wrong defendant. So you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, must give the right answer. We have nothing but sympathy for Dakota Weirs, but Lush Fertilizer did not cause their cancer because Lush Fertilizer put people over profits. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Before we begin with witnesses, just on a procedural note, with Team Daryl using the signs to indicate the amount of time left, I found that to be effective and not disruptive. And then Team Pam, of course, was using the chat feature. So I'm going to allow both teams to use either procedure, either holding up the time cards or the chat, whichever is most effective for you.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yes. So let's proceed. Plaintiff, please call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Mr. Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Mr. Weirs, you've already been sworn. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Weirs. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dakota Weirs, and that is spelled W-E-I-R-S.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
Of course, I'm Dakota. I'm 20 years old. I use he, him pronouns, and today I'm here to expose what Lush Fertilizer did to me.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I used to be very involved in my community. You know, I was a member of the National Honor Society. I was president of my school's student government. For work, I was a landscaping technician at Haven Landscaping, and when I had time, I volunteered for the Denver Rescue Mission. I also play I used to play the piano as well.
I notice you say you used to do these things. Why did you stop?
Well, right before I was headed off to Juilliard for piano, I started noticing that I was tired all the time and that my neck was starting to hurt. And so after all these medical exams and doctor's appointments, I was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And ever since then, my life has deteriorated.
What symptoms led to your diagnosis?
Well, the first thing I noticed was this sudden weight loss and this strange swelling around my stomach. And then my neck hurts, my sides hurts, and even my chest hurts as well. It's crippling. And now I can't even sit at the piano anymore without bruising or losing my breath. I can't do what I was meant to do.
You mentioned you were going to Juilliard. Why aren't you going anymore?
Well, before I was diagnosed, I was very passionate about piano. I was so driven and I worked so hard at it that I received a full ride scholarship to the Juilliard of New York. Everything seemed like it was coming together with my scholarship and my admission, and now I can't even accept it. I can't plan my condition.
I'm so sorry for your losses, Mr. Weirs. Let's start talking about your work. What did you do for Haven Landscaping?
Well, when I was 14 years old, I started working for this local business called Haven Landscaping. It was just another way to be involved in the community. But when I worked there, I was too young to work with a lot of the complicated machinery, so I mainly found myself on the grounds working with seeds and fertilizers. It wasn't bad though. I mean, I love working outside and working with the green grass, especially in Colorado.
And what was the atmosphere like at Haven?
Working at Haven was a great way to get paid to do something I actually enjoyed doing. I remember I was usually instructed to wear certain protective gear when working with certain chemicals, but sometimes it was just so hot that we just couldn't. I mean, no one really followed those instructions. My boss never really enforced them. But if I had any idea that I could get cancer, I definitely would have covered up.
And why didn't you listen to your boss's suggestions to cover up?
Well, no one else was doing it. And my 14-year-old self was just taking the example of everyone else around me because they didn't seem to think it was a big deal. I didn't know what I was exposing myself to.
Now, how was your overall experience working at Haven Landscaping?
I actually really liked working at Haven. I just wish I never worked with Lush. That's how I know I was exposed to Drufo.
Now, are you sure you used Lush fertilizer?
Yes, I am.
Have you seen the Lush fertilizer packaging label?
Yes, when I worked at Haven.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 1 for the witness.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Weirs, is Exhibit 1 a fair and accurate representation of the Lush packaging that you used?
Yes, that's the photo I received from my boss.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Your Honor, I ask for Exhibit 1 to be published to the jury.
You may publish it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Weirs, what did the Lush packaging you used look like?
Well, on one side, it has an ingredients section, and on the other, it has this recommendation section. But the only caution it gives is that the product could potentially irritate my eyes.
Well, does the packaging seem to have any warnings?
No, the word warning is nowhere on the label. There's nothing about long-term effects and certainly nothing about cancer.
Does the packaging mention anything about the effects of Drufo?
No, only that it's an ingredient. There's nothing about long-term effects or what it can cause. There was no reason for me to be worried.
Thank you, timekeeper. You can take down Exhibit 1 now. Now, Mr. Weirs, did you ever research the contents of Lush fertilizer?
Yes, I did.
Now, why did you investigate them?
Well, I was watching the news one day and I saw this story about Lush, or more specifically about Drufo and how the company had leaked documents that show it's dangerous. Apparently, from what I could gather, the company had lied about its safety, and I was freaking out because I knew I had used Lush when I worked at Haven and I didn't remember any warnings about it. I was concerned it was related to my condition.
Now, did you know Lush has Drufo?
I mean, it's on the ingredients list, but I had no idea what it was at the time, and I thought it was safe since there was no warnings about it. But once those documents got leaked, I kind of put two and two together and started doing my own research.
Let's move on to your new life, Mr. Weirs. Is there anything else your diagnosis has restricted?
Everything I used to, I can't anymore. I'm not active in my community. My future for college has been ruined. I can't work or do anything, really. My family has been bombarded with these medical bills, and I don't even know if I'll be alive next year. I don't know why this is happening to me. I'm so scared.
My deepest condolences, Mr. Weirs. Now, what is the aspect of your past life that you miss most?
Piano. Piano was my life. Ever since I was a kid, I was obsessed with the thing. But when my grandfather died, piano became even more important to me. I remember I would sit at the piano and pretend like he was sitting there right beside me, playing with me. It was how I coped.
Now, on the whole, how has your life been changed by non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
My life has been destroyed. My dream of living in New York and being a concert pianist has been completely ruined. And the worst part is is that I've lost my connection with Grandpa for good.
Mr. Weirs, how much would you pay to not be in pain today?
Oh, wow, I would give so much.
Sorry, Mr. Weirs, if you had to give us a monetary amount.
Today, at least $1,000, enough to compensate for the pain I have to endure hour after hour.
And will the rest of your life ever be the same?
No. The dreams, the abilities I've lost, no.
Mr. Weirs, what are you going to do moving forward?
I just hope that through this experience, I can save someone from this fate. Lush needs to be held responsible for what they've done. Hopefully something good can come from all this.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. I have no further questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Cross-examined by the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Weirs.
Good morning.
I would like to start by first off saying that my co-counsel and I are so sorry that you are living with cancer, and all of our hearts truly do go out to you.
Thank you.
Luckily, though, your doctor has not given up hope, correct?
Yes, I'm very grateful, though I am not sure as to how my future looks as of now.
And earlier you testified that you will have no way of attending Juilliard, but Juilliard has allowed you to defer your scholarship for up to 2 years, correct?
Yes, they have, but as of now, I can't even play the piano. As of now, I am in no competitive ability to compete in that rigorous program.
But you can defer the scholarship.
Yes, I have the ability to.
Now, Mr. Weirs, you worked at Haven Landscaping for several years, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Your job there was to spread fertilizer?
Yes, I worked with fertilizers and seeds.
Now, during the several years that you worked at Haven Landscaping, you used multiple different types of fertilizers and other chemicals, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you cannot be certain that Lush fertilizer is the product at fault for your cancer.
I can't be 100% certain, but with the evidence that's surmounted, I am very sure that it's the cause.
Okay, and Mr. Weirs, you also cannot be 100% certain that a fertilizer caused your illness.
Once again, I can't be 100% sure, but with the evidence surrounding Lush, I'm very sure that they are what caused me to be in this situation.
And Mr. Weirs, earlier you testified about a certain TV story. Now that TV clip was the thing that first convinced you that Lush fertilizer had to be the product responsible for your cancer, correct?
It definitely started my investigation into the company, yes.
Okay, and you testified that Lush had a product label, correct?
Yes.
And that product label had certain recommendations, correct?
Recommendations, yes.
You also testified earlier that you did not follow these instructions because other people were not following those instructions. So am I correct in saying that you did not follow the safety instructions from the manufacturer of this product because other people were not following them?
I didn't follow those user recommendations because I didn't follow those user recommendations all the time, both because there was no correct warning and because I took the example of those around me.
Okay, let's talk about this lack of warning you keep mentioning. Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 1.
Permission granted.
Co-counsel, if you could, okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Weirs, I understand that the word warning is not on this label, but do you see the word hazards?
Yes, I do.
And do you see the word caution?
Yes, I do.
And do you see the word first aid?
Yes, I do.
Now, aren't these all types of warnings that Lush put on their label?
They are cautions, but they don't warn me that I could get non-Hodgkin lymphoma. They don't tell me that I could lose the ability to play piano.
But Mr. Weirs, I'm just asking, so Lush did provide some sort of warning, even though the word warning was not on the label.
They cautioned me that my eyes could be irritated, if that's what you're asking, yes.
Okay, and if my co-counsel could zoom into the section of the label marked user safety recommendations. Mr. Weirs, could you read that first sentence for the jury?
Yes. User safety recommendation.
Objection, Your Honor, cumulative. This has already been admitted into evidence. There is no need to read it word for word.
Yeah, I understand, but I think it's okay to highlight a particular provision on the label.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Weirs, could you go ahead and read that first sentence?
Yes. User safety recommendations. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin.
So according to this label, which was produced by Lush, you were supposed to be wearing protective clothing at all times when using this product.
I was recommended to do so.
Okay, and the company you worked for, Haven Landscaping, also had a policy in place about wearing protective clothing.
Yes, when working with certain chemicals.
But despite this label and the instruction by the company you worked for, you did not wear protective clothing.
Your Honor, I believe my defendant's screen is frozen, or my witness's screen is frozen.
Understood. You know, let's stop the timekeeping for a minute and
I
figure out.
apologize. I apologize. I was just frozen. I can continue now.
Okay, so timekeeper, are you ready to start again?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so let's pick up where we left off. Counsel, if you want to repeat your last question, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, my question was, despite this label and the instruction you received from your own employer, you did not wear protective clothing while using this product.
I didn't always wear protective clothing, but once again, I didn't know that I could end up like this.
You did not wear pants.
Sometimes.
You did not wear long sleeves.
Sometimes.
You did not wear gloves.
Also sometimes.
Okay, and Mr. Weirs, could you please read that second sentence for the jury?
Yes. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning, maintaining personal protective equipment.
So according to this label, you were also supposed to be wearing a respirator or face mask at all times.
The use of such were recommended, yes.
And your employer also instructed you to cover your face.
When working with certain chemicals, yes, that's correct.
But still, despite this label and that instruction from your employer, you did not wear a face mask.
I did not follow this recommendation from the label because I didn't know that I could be in such a dire situation today.
Mr. Weirs, you said that the reason you chose not to wear a face mask was because you liked feeling the wind on your face.
Sometimes, yes, it was really hot, so I did like to feel the air on my face.
Okay, and if we could zoom out of the label a little bit, thank you, co-counsel. Mr. Weirs, you were 14 when you started working with this product, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So legally you were a minor, correct?
Yes.
If my co-counsel could zoom into the hazards section of the label. Mr. Weirs, that label says keep out of reach of children. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did read that correctly.
So not only did you fail to take any safety precautions when using this product, but you were not supposed to be using it in the first place, were you?
I was a teenager. I don't think children are considered teenagers, but yes.
Okay, thank you. Co-counsel can now stop sharing this. Now, Mr. Weirs, did you prepare a statement for this case?
Yes, I did.
And you included everything you thought would be relevant to today's case in that statement, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you signed that statement under oath?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to screen share this witness's affidavit.
Well, I think it would be appropriate if there's a specific question about it, rather than just showing the affidavit. Can you ask the question and see if the witness agrees?
Of course, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, did you say in your statement that you would pay $1,000 to be not feeling the pain today?
I didn't say that explicitly in my statement, no, but I do need to quantify an amount that I think reasonably compensates for how much pain I'm going through.
But you did not put that in your statement.
No, I did not put that in my written statement.
Okay, Your Honor, I don't feel like I need to share this statement anymore. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any redirect?
Your Honor, a very brief one within the scope of the cross, of course. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Weirs, why didn't you wear protective clothing when using Lush fertilizer?
I didn't know I had to. There was both no warnings on the label, and a lot of people around me weren't doing it as well. I was 14. I didn't know my life could be over at 20 years old.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. And what comes to mind when you hear the phrase "keep out of reach of children"?
When I think of keep out of reach of children, I think of toddlers crawling into a fertilizer, or I think of little kids playing in the grass with fertilizer exposed. I don't think of teenagers working at a local business.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Weirs, you are excused. Plaintiff, please call your second witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Carson Durst to the stand.
Carson Durst, you've already been sworn. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Hello, my name is Carson Durst. That's D-U-R-S-T.
What's your profession?
I'm currently the lead product developer for Terra's Greenery, which is a fertilizer company.
Where did you start your career in fertilizer?
I started as an intern at Lush Fertilizer way back in 2003, and I rose pretty quickly through the ranks and became a product development engineer after just 3 months.
And how were you chosen for this internship?
The CEO of Lush Fertilizer, Blake Doncourt, pulled some strings to get me the internship.
Why did he pull strings for you?
Well, my best friend growing up was Charles Doncourt, the son of Blake Doncourt. We were both going to ASU for college, where I got my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. And approaching graduation, I was admittedly having a bit of trouble finding work. Charles said he'd reach out to Blake, and Blake said that she could help.
What were you working on when you first started as an intern at Lush?
Well, my first big project was helping to test and research the safety of Drufo.
What were your specific responsibilities with regards to that study?
Well, I was tasked with researching just one of the chemical compounds that comprise Drufo.
What did this research consist of?
Well, I was researching studies that had previously been done on this chemical compound, and I found one study from England about the carcinogenic nature of this chemical compound.
Your Honor, permission for our timer to screen share what has been marked as Exhibit 3.
Permission granted.
Mr. Durst, do you recognize this document?
Yes, it's the study I found as part of that research.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of that study?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 3 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission for this to be constructively published to the jury.
Permission granted.
Mr. Durst, what are your takeaways from the study?
Well, the study concludes that this chemical compound might be carcinogenic in rats, but I could not find any study which explored the chemical compound and its harmful effects in humans.
What did you do once you found this study?
I documented all of the information in my notebook, as all of us were supposed to do for this study.
And what happened to this notebook?
I sent it to my superior, Jerry Langley, and supposedly she reviewed it and compiled it along with all of the other research into a single report that was sent to upper level management.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. Timekeeper, you can stop screen sharing, please. Mr. Durst, let's talk about your time at Lush after your internship. Did you take part in any other studies with Lush?
Yes, I did. Right on the heels of my promotion to product development engineer in September of 2003, there was a second study that was conducted by Lush about the safety of Drufo.
And how did you join this study?
Well, Jerry emailed me along with all of the other product development engineers and invited us to join it.
Did you keep this email?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, permission for our timekeeper to screen share what has been marked as Exhibit 4.
Permission granted.
Mr. Durst, do you recognize this document?
Yes, it's the email I received from Jerry about the study in September of 2003.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of that email?
Yes, it is.
And as far as you're aware, were these emails sent in the course of a regularly conducted business activity?
Yes, we were regularly studying the safety of our products.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 will be admitted.
And Your Honor, permission to constructively publish Exhibit 4 to the jury?
Yes, permission granted.
Mr. Durst, what did you see in this email?
Well, generally, it invites me along with the other product development engineers to help in a second study researching the potential carcinogenic qualities that were found in Drufo in the June study. It also states specifically that we as product development engineers should meet with senior management to be briefed on target market positions and economic strategies that were planned for Drufo.
And what was your personal understanding of this email?
Well, to me, that part about economic strategies seems to imply that we should present our results and analysis in a positive light to promote the financial success of Drufo. This was also made very clear in our weekly meetings.
And what did you do with your analysis once you finished the study?
Once all of us had reached our conclusions, we had one final meeting to present all of the analysis and research to my boss, Jer, and an upper echelon manager named Alex Monroe.
What happened at that final meeting?
Well, we all presented our research, but the one thing that I found most important was that one scientist expressed concern that not only may Drufo contain a carcinogen, but that her analysis found it was perhaps linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And how did Alex and Jerry react?
Well, at the end of the whole meeting, Alex told us all to keep it in the walls until they figure out what they were going to do.
And after this meeting, what happened to the study?
Well, I mean, it obviously wasn't published to the public because it was an in-house study, but it was reviewed by upper management, including Jerry, compiled into a report, and that report was distributed to all of the higher level employees at Lush.
Did you see the final study?
Yes, I read the report about a month after that meeting.
What did you see in the study?
The main conclusion from the study was that further analysis was required in order to determine if Drufo had any long-term health effects like cancer.
And what did the study suggest Lush do about this potential risk?
Well, it suggested baking Drufo to completely eliminate the possibility that Drufo could be considered carcinogenic.
So what did Lush do with this information?
Lush did nothing. The study, which was conducted by Lush, seemed to frame baking Drufo as above what was necessary, which complied with what senior management seemed to want in the meetings that we had.
What was your interpretation of the report, having participated in the study?
This study, from what I gathered, was a way for Lush to protect their shiny do-gooder image. The study seemed misleading, and they left out information that I found valuable from our weekly meetings.
What valuable information did you feel they left out?
Well, the biggest example is that non-Hodgkin lymphoma is never specifically addressed in the report, despite being addressed in that one final meeting. I felt it was a deliberate attempt to fit the narrative desired by management, as Drufo was, in their eyes, it was the goose that laid the golden egg.
And so what ended your career with Lush?
Well, this had been going on ever since I'd been there, but starting in 2005, my coworkers started filing many complaints that I didn't deserve the promotions I was getting, and that's wildly unfounded. I brought it up with Blake, and well, she told me to deal with it myself, which that was what really ended my career with Lush.
And why is that?
Well, I felt betrayed. Blake was like family to me, and the fact that she didn't defend me the fact that she didn't defend me hurt. I realized that I didn't have a future with Lush anymore and immediately went looking for other jobs.
And why did you decide to go work for Terrace Greenery?
Mainly, they were hiring when I started looking for jobs. I knew it would get Blake's goat, and I was very conflicted considering my relationship with Blake, but I had to look out for myself now. And the best way for me to do that was going to work for Terrace Greenery in 2006.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Durst.
Good morning.
You have a degree in chemical engineering.
Yes, from Arizona State University.
Am I correct in saying you didn't graduate top of your class?
No, I was middle of the pack, but I did very well.
And did you get your job at Lush after commiserating with Charles Duncourt about not having any luck finding a job?
Yes, Charles was my best friend, and he was the son of the CEO of Lush.
And it's true that Blake pulled strings for you to get this position?
Yes.
To clarify for the jury, you are not an oncologist.
No, I'm not.
You are not an epidemiologist.
No, not.
Nor are you a medical doctor.
No, I'm a product development engineer.
So when you began at Lush, you were an intern, correct?
Yes, that's true.
And you served in this position for 3 months?
Yes, before I was quickly promoted to product development engineer, which I believe was a testament to the high level at which I was performing.
So you based your concerns on a study performed by a team you spent 3 months with?
I'm sorry, what concerns are you talking about?
Your concerns on Drufo.
Well, that was my main concerns come from the second study, which we spent 4 months conducting. So I spent 7 months total testing the safety of Drufo.
You found a study testing Drufo on rats, correct?
Yes, from England.
And a previous conclusion of this study was that it was not carcinogenic, correct?
The study concluded that this chemical compound may be carcinogenic in rats.
Yes, but the previous part.
What could you explain further what you're referring to?
My apologies. It's part of the separate studies shared on Exhibit 3 from the entered exhibit.
Yes, that's why they conducted the study.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Durst. So you never found a study identifying Drufo to be carcinogenic on rats, correct?
Well, that's why we ended up doing the second in-house study to fully test the safety.
My apologies, I meant on humans, correct? You never found a study identifying Drufo to be carcinogenic on humans?
No, that's why we did the second study in Lush, which was found to be inconclusive. They didn't conclude anything about its carcinogenic nature.
Can you admit that you didn't have access to all data analyzed by the research and development team?
Well, I was at every meeting where we presented our analysis, so I would assume that I heard all relevant information.
But you admit that you didn't have access to all the data analyzed by the research and development team?
Not every bit of it, no.
And you admit that after you handed in your lab notebook, you could only speculate about what happened next?
Yes, but it was Jerry's job to compile it into a report to send to everyone, and I trust that she did that.
Right, so you can only speculate about what happened next?
Yes.
Is it true you were forced to sign a performance improvement plan?
Yes, that's true.
And after you signed this plan, instead of improving your performance, you went to talk to Blake, correct?
Well, I didn't feel my performance needed improving. The complaints were wildly unfounded, and I think they were just based on my relationship with Blake.
Had you ever considered that you received these poor reviews because you were a bad employee?
I did, but I received a promotion to product development engineer after just 3 months in the company. It seemed ridiculous to me that people would be complaining when I was receiving constant affirmation that my work was doing very well.
Did you ever bring your concerns to anyone's attention prior to your poor performance reviews?
No, I didn't feel a need to.
So after another abysmal performance review, you went to talk to Blake again, correct?
Yes, I did.
And this conversation left you disheartened.
Yeah, I was seething afterwards. I felt very betrayed by Blake.
And soon after, you were fired.
I was fired, but I had already been hired by Terrace Greenery.
Right, Lush's biggest competitor.
Yes, they are.
And you applied to get Blake's goat.
No, I knew that it would get Blake's goat, but I was very conflicted originally because of my relationship with Blake, but I knew that I had to look out for myself.
And you had previously signed a confidentiality agreement?
Yes, I had.
And you broke this agreement?
No, I didn't. I didn't know that I had broken that agreement. I didn't actually release any trade secrets from Lush to Terrace Greenery. I didn't break it at all. I just forgot that I had signed it and ended up going to a company without any malintent at all.
Terrace Greenery created a product very similar to Lush fertilizer.
Yes, yeah, we're creating it right now.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Pardon me?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Durst, you are excused. Plaintiff, please call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Dr. Rogers, you've already been sworn. Counsel, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Rogers.
Good morning.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Of course, hello. My name is Dr. Casey Rogers. That's Rogers, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm a professor over at UC Berkeley in the Horticulture and Entomology Department. And I know, plants and bugs sounds super boring, but I promise you it's a lot more interesting than it sounds.
And Dr. Rogers, what else do you do when you're not teaching?
Well, when I'm not taking care of my beetles, Ringo, Jimothy, Timothy, the big one, and Vanessa, I'm usually conducting my own research, specifically in the field of toxicology relating to fertilizers and pesticides. And I currently work actually over in the environmental chemistry and toxicology laboratory.
And would you tell us more specifically about the research that you've conducted?
I've actually been publishing work since 2003 in multiple topics, but all within the field of horticulture. But I've actually spent most of my time studying Drufo, both in relation to the people who use it and its effects on the plants it's used on.
So Dr. Rogers, it sounds like you have a lot of very interesting stuff on your plate. Would you just tell us how you made it to this point in your career?
Of course, well, I started out by getting my bachelor's in science of agriculture and chemistry from CSU. And after I graduated, I began work as a research analyst until I got my PhD from UC Berkeley in entomology and agriculture.
And would you mind sharing a little bit more about what you did as a research analyst?
Of course, but I can't tell you where I worked, but what I can tell you is that I worked with multiple chemical industry clients, helping them to synthesize, analyze, and summarize data for their businesses. And I did this through both conducting my own research as well as putting all this data together into written products.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Your Honor, I now move to tender Dr. Casey Rogers in the fields of horticulture, toxicology, and research analysis pursuant to Rule 702.
What fields were those again? Horticulture, toxicology, and what else?
Research analysis, Your Honor.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission for a brief voir dire.
Brief voir dire is permitted.
Good morning, Dr. Rogers.
Good morning.
No formal degree in toxicology, correct?
No, but I have plenty of experience. Like I said, I work in the toxicology laboratory.
Right, but you have no experience as a medical doctor, yes?
Not as a medical doctor, but sometimes the field of toxicology sometimes overlaps, not exactly in medicine and treatment, but in figuring out how certain chemicals cause certain effects.
But you are not a medical doctor, yes?
No, medicine is not my field, but toxicology is.
Medicine is not your field. Your field is agriculture and entomology, correct?
Yes, but I have studied toxicology, or not study, I have experience in toxicology.
In essence, one of your expertise is agriculture, which is studying plants and livestock, yes?
Yes.
And entomology, which is the study of bugs. Do I have that correct?
Yes, it is.
And these are the fields you currently work in and teach in every day, correct?
Yes, yes, they are.
Your Honor, I don't object to this witness being entered in horticulture and possibly toxicology. However, I would like to limit the scope to make sure that this witness doesn't testify towards anything medical, as they are not a medical doctor, and specify that medicine is not their field of expertise.
So I will admit the witness as an expert in horticulture, toxicology, and research analysis, which includes opinions about the effects of substances on humans. The fact that she's not a medical doctor goes to the weight of her testimony, but not the admissibility. So I will admit her on those three areas: horticulture, toxicology, and research analysis.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. May we proceed?
Yes.
Now, moving forward, Dr. Rogers, we both know that Drufo plays a central role in today's case. Would you mind just explaining to the jury what exactly Drufo is?
Of course. Well, essentially, Drufo is a compound made of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus that works as a sort of preservative to keep fertilizer intact for longer periods of time.
And when did you first hear about Drufo?
I think I first heard about Drufo around 2003 when it was first being developed by Lush, but it really caught my attention when it was first released to the public because it seemed to me as though it was rushed to the market.
And if you first heard about Drufo in 2003, why are you still studying it today?
Well, in the following years, I had heard numerous reports of the potentially negative effects of Drufo, alongside reports that it was found to be carcinogenic in rats. And I understand the potential environmental benefits of Drufo, but it still troubled me that I never saw the human safety issues of Drufo studied further or looked into by Lush. And this is or looked into further by Lush, I should say. And this is a large part of what prompted me to conduct my own study regarding the safety of Drufo.
And Dr. Rogers, let's just dive in a little deeper. Would you tell us specifically about that study regarding Drufo and the work you did?
Of course. Well, the purpose of my study was to find how different levels of Drufo exposure corresponded to cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma and the potential methods of prevention. I used 3 groups over the course of several years to conduct this study.
And would you just tell us some more about those groups?
Well, like I said, I observed 3 groups, each with different levels of exposure to Drufo. The first group with no exposure, the second group with moderate amounts of exposure, and the third one with high levels of exposure. And those who were exposed to Drufo included people like gardeners and farm laborers. And I followed these groups both during the years during their exposure and then the years following to monitor them for various health conditions.
And after monitoring these groups for for several years, what did the study conclude?
Well, the study actually found an increase in serious health conditions in those who were exposed to Drufo. More specifically, that those who had high exposure to Drufo were 10 times more likely to develop cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma as those in the no exposure group, and 5 times more likely to develop these cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma as those in the only moderate exposure group. And I would just like to say the part of the study regarding prevention was found to be inconclusive because many workers are not provided with proper protective gear. So it's unclear whether devices such as masks and long sleeves would even be a sufficient level of protection against Drufo.
Thank you for explaining that, Dr. Rogers. And just before we move on, I'm still confused about one thing. I mean, all the people in this study had lives aside from their work. Couldn't something other than Drufo have caused the cancer?
Well, actually, the variation in the lives of the subjects aside from their work is very crucial to the validity of this study. Of course, there's a minimal chance that something other than Drufo could have caused cancer in one of the patient or one of the subjects. But the fact that the only link between each one of the subjects was Drufo exposure points at being the only plausible link or the most probable cause of their cancer.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. And did you hear Mr. Weirs testify earlier about the labels Lush puts on their products with Drufo?
Yes, I did, and I'd actually love to talk about it.
Your Honor, may I have permission for our timekeeper to share previously admitted Exhibit 1?
Yes. Yes.
Now, looking at this label, Dr. Rogers, would you tell us just how these warnings relate to what you found in your study?
Of course. Well, I would just like to start by saying that this is just a general recommendation label for fertilizer, not for Drufo specifically. So of course it mentions to wear a mask and long sleeves, but it only recommends that users do this. It's not an explicit requirement of using this product. And so it does not stress nearly enough how important it is to wear protection and cover up.
And does it say anything about carcinogens on the label?
Not at all, not at all.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, timekeeper. We're done with this exhibit. And finally, Dr. Rogers, as you know, Dakota Weirs is currently battling non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Would you just tell us how much experience you have with Mr. Weirs' case specifically?
Well, in preparation for this trial, I reviewed both Mr. Weirs' medical records to gain a better understanding of his current medical condition, as well as his employment records to gain a better understanding of his level of exposure to Drufo.
And what, if any, opinions do you have about what caused Dakota Weirs' lymphoma?
Well, after reviewing Mr. Weirs' case, I found that his level of exposure to Drufo was very similar to the high exposure group in my study. And so after looking at this, I can say there's a high degree of probability that Mr. Weirs' non-Hodgkin lymphoma was caused by exposure to Drufo.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. This is your first time testifying as an expert witness, yes?
Yes, but my work has been used in litigation before, so I'm not totally new to the courtroom.
Right, but you said it hopefully won't be your last time in the courtroom, correct?
Right. I feel a certain level of responsibility towards people in Mr. Weirs' situation, and I have the knowledge that can help them get the justice that they deserve.
Right, and you want to be on the forefront of the battle for more lawsuits in the future, yes?
Exactly. Like I said, I feel a certain level of responsibility towards people in Mr. Weirs' situation.
You conducted a study on Drufo, correct?
Yes, I did.
But nowhere in your statement do you say that the study was peer reviewed.
The peer review process takes such a long time. For all we know, it could be being peer reviewed right now.
And you also don't say it's duplicated for accuracy, yes?
Again, my study took years to complete. So like I said, with peer review, it could be being replicated as we speak in this courtroom today.
And you solely geared this study towards one environmental factor, correct?
Yes, Drufo exposure.
Right, so you failed to look at any other conditions that your subjects were exposed to, yes?
You mean like other fertilizers? Is that what you mean by conditions?
Yes, fertilizers or any other things that they could have been exposed to in their daily lives.
Well, what I was looking at was their exposure to Drufo. So that was really what I was focusing on.
Right, but by solely looking at Drufo, you failed to consider that they could have developed cancers from other exposures in their daily lives, yes?
Like I said before, the fact that all of them were exposed to Drufo at this level, sure, it's possible that one of them developed cancer from other substances, but since they were the only link between them, the only common link between them was Drufo, that makes me believe that that's the most probable cause.
Right, you stated in your direct examination that the validity is based on the variation of what they were exposed to in this common link being Drufo, yes?
Yes, that was my independent variable, if you will.
But you made an affidavit in this case, correct?
Yes, I did.
But nowhere in this affidavit do you state this conclusion that the validity was based off of the variation?
No.
Of the exposure? Right. You state in your direct that part of your study was inconclusive, yes?
Yes, the part about preventative measures, because, we're not even sure if long sleeves and a mask is sufficient.
Right, but wouldn't you say if Drufo was carcinogenic, it would be important to discover the validity or the efficacy of these protective equipment?
Yes, that is part of why I was studying it. But since plenty of workers aren't given access to equipment like masks, that's why it was inconclusive.
Could you have supplied
access?
Could you have supplied these workers with protective equipment?
I was looking at it from a standpoint of how does this happen in their actual normal jobs. That would be influencing the study.
Even though you didn't have time to replicate this inconclusive part of your study, you still crafted multiple safety recommendations, yes?
Yes, because like I said, plenty of workers are not given access to this equipment, but I figured that a mask is better than nothing at all.
Right, so a mask was one of these recommendations, and so was long sleeves, yes?
Yes.
And long pants?
Yes.
But you state in your statement that Dakota was subjected to the use of Drufo without protective gear as well, yes?
Yes, that is my understanding of this case.
He didn't wear long pants?
From what I heard from his testimony, he sometimes wouldn't wear long pants.
And he also sometimes wouldn't wear long sleeves or a mask, yes?
Again, sometimes.
So Dakota neglected to wear the equipment that you previously recommended for safe use of Drufo.
Yes, but again, we're not even sure if that level would have been sufficient to protect against Drufo.
And your claim today is that Drufo causes cancer, yes?
Yes, it is.
But this was made on your study, which has not yet been peer reviewed.
Like I said earlier, it could be being peer reviewed right now, but yes, that is the conclusion I came to.
And the conclusion you came to was based on a study that was partially inconclusive?
The inconclusive part was because of limited access to this equipment.
So it was made on a study that was partially inconclusive?
The part of my study that was inconclusive was not about the effects of Drufo, it was about the preventative measures of Drufo. Right, so I made my decision based off of my conclusive data.
I believe I'm out of time. No further questions, Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Just briefly, Your Honor. May I request a brief time check before I begin?
Yes.
Your Honor, the witness and the lawyer have 1 minute and 36 seconds left for a redirect.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, would you just explain again exactly which part of your study was inconclusive?
Yes, the inconclusive portion of my study was about preventative measures due to the fact that plenty of workers are not given proper access to protective equipment. The part of my study that was conclusive was the link between DRUFO and cancers like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you, counsel. Dr. Rogers, you are excused. Does the plaintiff rest their case?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
And is the defense ready to proceed with your witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Williams to the stand.
Dr. Williams, you've previously been sworn. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, good morning. My name is Dr. Devin Williams, Williams.
And what is your current occupation?
I currently lead the toxicology research and development labs at Lush, as well as I'm the outgoing chair of the company's ethic committee.
And what is it that you and your team research?
My team and I heavily evaluate all the chemical compounds in the products and the environmental impacts, and DRUFO is one of those chemical compounds.
And how long have you been working at Lush?
I've been with Lush for nearly a decade now and have been leading the labs for about 7 years.
What does your job position require you to do?
I largely oversee all the environmental impacts of our products. However, I also see myself as having an inherent responsibility to always consider the whys and ifs beyond my immediate project objectives.
And what scientific skills do you have?
Through my training and experience, I understand how to research and evaluate test results to determine the fate and effects of any potentially toxic chemical agents. With this, I know how to identify any potential harms and how to neutralize that harm if it ever does happen.
Did you receive a degree in toxicology?
Yes, I received a PhD in pharmacology as well as toxicology, which I completed at CSU.
And did you receive any other degrees?
Yes, I also received a post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology, as well as a master's degree in forensic toxicology.
Your Honor, based on this witness's extensive experience, training, and certification, we move to enter Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in pharmacotoxicology, the effects of DRUFO, and forensic toxicology pursuant to Rule 702.
Any objection?
No objections at this time, Your Honor.
So admitted. The doctor will be admitted as an expert in, and make sure I get this right, pharmacotoxicology,
The effects of DRUFO.
the effects of DRUFO, and forensic toxicology. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, and no objection to that?
Your Honor?
Yes,
I apologize. I actually would like to make a brief objection.
okay.
I don't believe quite enough foundation has been laid for the effects of DRUFO and what specifically that means. I don't believe enough foundation has been laid for exactly what Dr. Williams has done with DRUFO to testify to the broad scope of the effects of DRUFO. I just believe I would like to hear a little bit more about what Dr. Williams has done in relation with DRUFO and what exactly
Okay,
that.
thank you. Any additional foundation regarding expertise in the effects of DRUFO?
Yes, Your Honor. I can re-ask my question that laid foundation. What do you and your team research at Lush?
Well, again, I lead the toxicology research and development labs at Lush. With Lush fertilizer, we look at all the chemical compounds in those products, one of those being DRUFO. I've been working with DRUFO closely for many years now and have been able, and I have the expertise to evaluate all the positive and negative effects of DRUFO with my toxicology degree.
Okay, does that alleviate the objection?
I'll hold any further objections for now, Your Honor.
Noted, your objection is noted, but the doctor will be admitted in pharmacotoxicology, the effects of DRUFO, and forensic toxicology. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is DRUFO?
DRUFO is a new revolutionary chemical that binds all the ingredients in our fertilizer together. I'm also aware that I'm here today due to there's a fact and a belief that Drufo could cause cancer.
And why was Drufo created?
Drufo was originally created because it straddles both ways of how fertilizers enhance plant growth. One of those is adding nutrients, and the other by improving the effectiveness of the soil, which is by modifying its water retention and aeration, which both of these do affect environmental balances.
And you called Drufo a revolutionary product. Why is that?
Well, Drufo truly is a revolutionary product for the simple fact that it does not contribute to nitrate pollution. Many mid-20th century fertilizers focused on nitrogen-fixing chemical processes. However, this was deemed as problematic since we later discovered it causes a process known as eutrophication.
And what is eutrophication?
Eutrophication is when there's an excess amount of nutrients accumulating in various bodies of water. When there is an excess buildup of nitrates and fertilizers, these then seep into the soil and contaminate our waters.
And what are some of the harmful effects of eutrophication?
In short, eutrophication can kill off our fish as well as make water unconsumable for humans.
Objection relevant.
Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I will just continue. Basically, with eutrophication, again, kills off our fish, makes water uncontaminable. When there is an excess amount of nitrates, this then transforms into an excess buildup of nutrients. These will then harbor in algae blooms, denses the oxygen level, harbor bacteria, basically making the water extremely toxic for human consumption. This is where Drufo comes in. Drufo doesn't contribute to any of this and stops this process from the very beginning, making it a very environmentally safe chemical.
And is it true that Drufo is banned in the EU?
Yes, this is true.
And did this decision consider cancer risk?
The reasons the EU had ultimately decided to ban Drufo wasn't a cancer-related issue at all. Under the European Union's nitrate directive, no new fertilizer may be used.
Best evidence.
Overruled. You may proceed.
Thank you. Under the European Union's nitrate directive, no new fertilizer may be used that contribute to more than incidental nitrate accumulation. Even though Drufo heavily reduces the amount of nitrates in nature, it still contains some nitrogens. So with these unrealistic laboratory conditions and these lab results, it shows that Drufo has an excess buildup of nitrates.
So do you believe that this ban is valid?
Not at all. Again, Drufo heavily reduces nitrate pollution. And Lush Fertilizer Incorporated do plan on submitting our findings to the EU once we have all of our studies finalized.
Have you reviewed Casey Rogers' study?
I have, and I personally find Dr. Rogers' one study was a fluke.
What were the results of this study?
Dr. Rogers' study analysis had concluded that there was a correlation from Drufo to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. However, Dr. Rogers' study wasn't a clean and thorough one. A valid study would require a comparison from farm laborers who did use Drufo products to other farm laborers who use products without Drufo.
And can you explain any other possible errors there were in the procedure of the study?
Of course. I believe there were multiple errors in her study. One of those being she had compared apples to oranges. And also another one is with these array of environments, you could not pin Drufo down to being the cause of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. As well as Dr. Rogers' study has never been peer-reviewed and most importantly, never replicated.
Can you explain your analogy, apples to oranges?
Yes, of course. I had used this analogy to refer to the fact that I was comparing farm laborers who use Drufo products to other farm laborers who use Drufo products, or comparing apples to apples. However, Dr. Rogers' study had compared farm laborers to casual gardeners who all have an extremely different environments, or therefore comparing apples to oranges, and you couldn't pin it down to Drufo.
Can you talk about the study that can be done to determine if Drufo can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Of course. Overall, a key factor to let us know Drufo does not cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma is to look at the statistics. If you take any group of people, despite the environmental differences or even similarities, a certain number of them will obtain non-Hodgkin lymphoma. This is deemed as the random element. So in order to reduce this random element as much as possible, you have to compare very similar groups, farm laborers who use fertilizers with Drufo versus ones who don't. And with this, the data we've analyzed show that there is no correlation from Drufo to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
So has there been a significant statistical increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma since the creation of Drufo?
Actually, no, there has been nothing that has a significant increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma correlated to Drufo. Simply put, Drufo doesn't cause cancer.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good morning. It's still morning, Dr.
It
Williams.
is still morning.
It is still morning. I would like to start off by discussing your connection to Lush Fertilizer. You stated that you've been working with the company for about 10 years, yes?
Yes, this is true. Been with
And
them
you've been
for a while.
promoted to a top tier position at the company?
Yes, after 3 years of working there.
And you've said in your witness statement that you're prejudiced in favor of Lush and against Mr. Weirs.
I had stated in my witness statement that I do have a minor financial bias because I've been working with Lush for so long. However, it was only professional to state that since there are other people here today who have a much greater financial bias than I do.
Would you agree that bias means to favor one side over another?
Yes, that is the definition of bias. However, it's not the key factor of why I'm here today at all.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Now, just switching subjects slightly, you mentioned multiple times in your witness statement how beneficial Drufo is for the environment.
Yes, I did.
And you said you were sad that the jury can't weigh the benefits to the planet of Drufo in this case.
Unfortunately not. They're here to see if Drufo causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma or cancer, but that's not the case.
In fact, Lush is currently looking to place fertilizers containing Drufo into the EU.
Yes, I did state that.
And if this case comes out in favor of the plaintiff, you've stated that would create a whole host of bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU.
Well, of course, that could cause a whole amount of roadblocks for any company. Any company being accused of something such as this would face problems.
And you have a copy of your CV, including your certifications in court today, is that right?
Yes, I do. I believe it's Exhibit 9.
And would you recognize a copy of this CV if it was shown to you?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, may I have permission for our timekeeper to pull up what has been marked as Exhibit 9?
Yes.
Oh no. May we pause for a second?
Yeah, sorry, technical difficulties. I'll pull it up in a second.
Okay. And you can stop the time while we're doing this.
Thank you, timekeeper. Apologies, Dr. Williams.
Oh, no worries. Technical difficulties happen to all of us.
Indeed, indeed.
You all are much faster at screen sharing than I am.
There we are.
Okay, and please start the time again.
All right. Now, do you recognize this exhibit, Dr. Williams?
Yes, I do.
And would you say this is a fair and accurate representation of your CV?
Yes, I would. It is fair and accurate.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 9 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, if you go ahead and look at Exhibit 9 for me, nowhere on your CV does it specify that you've previously worked with the product Drufo. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. But I've worked with Lush Fertilizer for many years and have the training experience working with Drufo.
And you were not working for Lush when they conducted their Drufo studies in 2003, were you?
I was not part of the original Drufo team, no.
You say that the labs you worked in were concerned with Drufo's environmental impact.
Those are the ones I largely oversee, yes.
Yes. And you heard Mr. Weirs testify today that he'd heard concerns about Drufo on the news.
Yes, I did.
But you never mentioned any studies specifically pertaining to Drufo's effect on humans other than the ones completed in 2003.
Well, that's not within my witness statement.
Yes, in your witness statement, you never mention any other studies specific to Drufo's effect on humans.
No, I didn't see the need to, for it implied with my job position.
So that's a yes, you didn't mention any of them.
I did not in my witness statement, no.
I'm done with this exhibit, timekeeper, thank you. And you never provide any specific examples of data from the Drufo studies.
I had referred to the data analysis that we did when I talked about the statistical test with Drufo. That was the only study I referenced specifically.
Other than the statistics that were an analogy with apples and oranges, you don't provide any other examples of data.
I did not feel the need to, no, because again, with my job position, it's implied that I do.
And you never mentioned that baking Drufo would eliminate all risk.
That's not within my witness statement at all.
And you don't cite in your witness statement any studies done outside of Lush Fertilizer, other than that of Dr. Rogers.
For the simple fact that many studies don't have anything that proves that Drufo is harmful.
You don't cite any studies that corroborate your evidence outside of Lush Fertilizer.
No, I do not.
You don't cite any studies you don't cite any peer review of your studies outside of Lush Fertilizer.
Again, with my job position, it's implied that all these studies were conducted, and I largely oversee the lab. My team and I would have looked at all of them. Yes.
But in your witness statement, you don't cite any peer review of your studies done outside of Lush Fertilizer.
I do not mention in my witness statement, no.
And you don't mention any replication of your studies done outside of Lush Fertilizer.
No, I do not.
Now, finally, Dr. Williams, I'd like to talk about a few things you do say in your witness statement. You state that you're often asked to postulate as to broader outcomes than can be derived from your data sets. Is that right?
Well, while my work is principally data-driven, any scientist does have to have some level of postulation. So yes.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
And you say that Blake Doncourt needed you to keep Drufo products industry-leading, environmentally aware, and cost-effective. Is that right?
Those are some of the things that he asked me to do, yes. But again, I see myself as having the inherent responsibility to go much beyond my immediate project objectives. So I look much more than just that.
And Drufo is currently industry-leading, environmentally aware, and cost-effective, yes?
That's just some of the benefits of Drufo, yes.
And you think that when someone finds what they set out to find, you should always question their results?
Most definitely. That's what makes a study very valid.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, would you ever let financial bias affect the way you perform in the case today?
Of course not. I truly believe in all of the benefits of Drufo and the environment, that it's environmentally friendly, as well as Lush being an environmentally friendly company.
And with your high up position and witness expertise, do you have enough data to come to an accurate conclusion on the effects of Drufo?
I would say yes, definitely.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Williams, you are excused. Defense, please call your next witness.
The defense calls Ms. Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Skylar Weirs, you have already been sworn. Counsel, you may proceed.
Good morning, Ms. Weirs. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Good morning. My name is Skylar Weirs, Weirs.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
What's your profession?
I'm an investigative journalist for The Rationalist magazine.
What is The Rationalist magazine?
The Rationalist is a science education advocacy magazine. It's published by the Rationalist Society, which is just a nonprofit dedicated to stopping the spread of pseudoscience.
And what kind of material do you write for The Rationalist?
Well, I write on a variety of subjects, but most recently I've been writing on modern agritech and commercial agriculture.
Can you tell me more about your background in modern agritech?
Yeah, my editor picked me to write a series on modern agritech. And as part of that series, I wrote an article questioning the link between Drufo and cancer.
And what did you do to prepare to write these series of articles?
I spent almost a year reading and researching. I went through a bunch of different articles by all different various agritech companies. And from there, I looked back at the publications and studies referenced in those articles and looked over and studied those as well.
Wow. Did you do anything further?
Yes, I also maintained a wealth of information from the United States Department of Agriculture and also the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
And do you think all of this research gave you a good foundation to start writing?
Oh, yes, definitely. My knowledge base includes not only general knowledge, but also historical and statistical information. In fact, outside of the USDA and NASDA, I doubt many people really have the overall perspective on modern agritech as I do.
Your Honor, I move to admit Ms. Skylar Weirs as an expert in modern agritech pursuant to Rule 702.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. May I conduct a brief voir dire of the witness?
Yes, briefly.
Ms. Weirs, you have no experience working with agricultural technology, correct?
Well, I don't have direct experience. However, I have a lot of knowledge on it as I've done extensive research.
Degree in agricultural technology?
Not a degree, but again, I'm very educated on the subject.
You were never trained in working with agricultural technology?
I'm not working with it directly again, but I know a lot about it from my research.
So you do have knowledge of agricultural technology?
Correct.
But you say it's a general knowledge?
General across a bunch of different things with agritech, but yeah, I have general knowledge plus historical and statistical information.
Ms. Weirs, you can't name any specific studies relating to your research on agricultural technology.
In my statement, no, I don't name specific studies.
You can't name any specific authors of studies relating to your research on agricultural technology.
Well, rather than focusing on names of authors and articles, I focus more on reputable sources that the general public would know about, such as the USDA and NASDA.
Ms. Weirs, I'm asking, you cannot name any specific authors beyond the USDA or NSDA of specific studies relating to your research on agricultural technology.
I do not mention them in my statement, but I mean, the USDA and NASDA are pretty reputable sources.
Your Honor, the plaintiff objects to Skylar Weirs testifying as an expert witness regarding modern agritech. According to Rule 702, a witness may be tendered as an expert if their knowledge in a field is classified as scientific, technical, or specialized. Ms. Weirs does meet this criteria. However, Judge Staub's pretrial ruling required that the witness provide an understandable explanation of her qualifications, including the amount of time spent researching qualified agritech companies. Ms. Weirs has testified that she cannot name any specific companies that issued publications on agritech and therefore cannot testify as an expert in the area of modern agritech. However, if Ms. Weirs is qualified as an expert regarding modern agricultural technology, the plaintiff would ask that Ms. Weirs limit her testimony only to topics regarding modern agritech and does not offer opinions on market or industry behavior, as that would be beyond the scope of agricultural technology.
Is there any intent to offer opinions on counsel? I'm asking this of you, defense counsel. Any intent to offer opinions about, and I forgot what you just called it. Market
industry behavior.
Market and industry behavior.
Yes, we have limited intent in this area as she also researched Drufo, and Drufo is created by Lush Fertilizer. So we would touch briefly on Lush Fertilizer as a company in regards to how they produced Drufo.
Okay, well, the court finds that under Rule 702, the witness is qualified as an expert due to her specialized technical research, including the USDA. Therefore, the court will admit her as an expert in modern agritech, including being able to express opinions about market and industry behavior. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. You mentioned something earlier called Drufo. Can you tell the court what that is?
Yes, Drufo is a compound in Lush Fertilizer, and it's really revolutionary for both the environment and the people using it. It's a really effective bonding agent, meaning a significantly smaller amount needs to be applied. And this is really good for the environment, and as it reduces nitrate contamination in groundwater and waterways. And it's also good for the people using it because it has to be applied significantly less often.
And have you heard the claim that Drufo causes cancer?
Yes, I have.
Do you agree with this claim?
I do not. In my research, again, which includes various agritech companies to get all different opinions, I have not come across any credible studies linking the two.
But in your research, have you found any other gardening substances that have a better link to cancer?
That's a really good question. Yes, there's a lot of other pesticides on the market that contain active ingredients that Lush does not. A big one being arsenic, which is classified as a known carcinogen, and another one being glyphosate, which is classified as a potential carcinogen. So yes, these would have a much clearer link to cancer.
Moving on, if your twin Dakota doesn't win the settlement today, how would this affect you?
It would actually harm me financially.
How would it harm you financially?
Well, as far as I know, me and Dakota are the only beneficiaries of my father's will. And if he does not receive the settlement, my father has, of course, already agreed to shoulder his medical costs, meaning that I would technically get less money in the long run.
And how does it feel to be testifying against your twin today?
I mean, I don't even like to think of it that way. We're twins and we're family. I really wish I could stand by Dakota today, but my work has just shown me that Drufo is not a carcinogen.
So why are you here testifying today?
I'm here because I stand by my research that I started before Dakota's diagnosis. And I'm really confident that Lush Fertilizer and Drufo could really be a game changer in modern agritech as actually a safer alternative to currently used fertilizers.
And why are you so confident in Lush Fertilizer and Drufo?
Well, I initially started researching because of their commitment to donate some of their profits towards reducing nitrate contamination. But from there, what I was really impressed by was just how much of a safer and ethical product they are.
And based on all of your research, do you think Drufo could be responsible for Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
I do not. My research has demonstrated that Drufo is not a carcinogen. I heard Dakota testify that he used an array of different fertilizer products while working at Havens Landscaping. And I mean, these fertilizers could have been containing arsenic, which would have just such a clear link to cancer.
Right. So how could he have protected himself from these other carcinogenic fertilizers?
Well, I also heard Dakota testify that he did not wear any protective gear when working with fertilizer. And I hate to point fingers, but I think that's ultimately an issue of poor training by Haven Landscaping. No employer should allow its teenage workers to work with any chemicals, even safer ones like Lush, without ensuring that they're always wearing protective gear. And again, I want justice for Dakota just as much as anyone else. I just want him to get the right defendant.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good morning, Ms. Weirs. I'd like to talk a bit about the work you do. You work for the Rationalist, correct?
That's correct.
You dropped out of college to pursue this career?
I actually never went to college. It really wasn't for me. I'm really passionate about writing, though, so I went straight into that.
And for the Rationalist, you have published articles discussing agricultural technology.
That's correct, yes.
Including Drufo.
Correct.
Ms. Weirs, do you dispute the claim that Drufo causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Yes, in my extensive research, I haven't found any credible studies linking the two.
You claim that it is just as safe, if not more, than its competitors' products.
That's correct.
Ms. Weirs, you do not identify any of these other products.
No, within my statement, I focus on Lush and Lush fertilizer, not other fertilizers.
Specific articles on those competitor products?
Not in my statement, no.
You say that there are risks for modern agricultural products.
Yes, working with chemicals does have some inherent risk.
You say that every commercial pesticide has several well-known carcinogens.
Virtually every commercial pesticide, yes.
Such as nitrates?
Correct.
You say that pesticides are, by definition, poison.
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Weirs, you agree that Drufo is a modern agricultural product?
Yes, but it's a lot safer than other ones as it doesn't contain additional known carcinogens such as glyphosate and arsenic.
You know that one of the ingredients listed in Drufo is nitrogen.
Yes, virtually every commercial pesticide contains nitrogen, but a lot of others, again, contain known carcinogens like glyphosate and arsenic.
Nitrogen is known to contribute to various types of cancer.
Relevance.
Overruled.
Ms. Weirs, nitrogen is known to contribute to various types of cancer.
That's correct, and virtually every commercial pesticide contains nitrogen.
You mentioned that Drufo only needs to be applied once or twice a year, limiting users' exposure to the product.
Correct.
Therefore, you assert it is much safer for the environment?
Correct.
And for people?
Correct, yes.
So if a person were to use Drufo more than twice a year, it would be more dangerous for the user?
I do not mention that in my statement, so I'd only be speculating.
Ms. Weirs, it could be reasonably expected for a person working at a landscaping company to apply it more than twice a year.
Again, that's not in my statement. I didn't work at Havens, but I suppose.
Ms. Weirs, you were never really close with your sibling, correct?
We didn't have the stereotypical relationship, no, but I mean, we're twins.
He doesn't support your career?
I don't mention that in my statement, but I believe he may mention that in his.
He says you'll write anything for the right price?
Again, that's not in my statement.
Including articles about conspiracies?
Again, I don't mention Dakota's thoughts on my work in my statement.
Ms. Weirs, you are currently 20 years old?
Yes, that's correct.
In your witness statement, you reference a March Madness season a few years ago?
Yes, I love March Madness.
So you participated in sports gambling a couple years ago, correct?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't put a little money into their March Madness bracket?
Ms. Weirs, you are aware that the age for legal sports gambling is 21 years of age?
Well, I'm not sure if there's a line between like sports betting and March Madness and like casino gambling, but I suppose, yes.
So you were underage when participating in that sports gambling?
Relevance.
I'm going to overrule the objection. It goes to the witness's credibility.
Ms. Weirs, you were underage when participating in that sports gambling.
Again, I'm not totally sure if March Madness betting constitutes as that, but yes, I put some money into my bracket when I was underage.
You were underage during that time.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite hear you.
I'm just asking if you were underage during that time.
Yes, correct.
Ms. Weirs, your own twin has immense expenses and medical bills.
Unfortunately, yes.
For which your father pays for.
Correct.
And Ms. Weirs, you resent both your sibling for the cost of their medical bills.
Improper character evidence.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, for which your father pays for your siblings' medical bills.
I'm objecting to the question she was asking regarding the resentment of my witness.
Well, again, I think that goes to credibility of the witness's testimony. So objection overruled.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
You resent both your sibling for the cost of their medical bills and your father for choosing to shoulder those same bills.
No, of course not.
Ms. Weirs, you testified today that you are worried about the amount of money that will be left if your father has to pay for your siblings' medical bills.
As I stated on direct, it would actually harm me financially, as we're the only two beneficiaries of the will. And he's already agreed to cover her costs if he doesn't receive this settlement.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Do you believe you have any family bias in this case today?
No, I do not.
And do you have any financial bias in this case today?
No, again, not if Dakota does not receive the settlement, it would only harm me financially.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any recross limited to the scope of redirect?
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Weirs, you are excused. Defense, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Ms. Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Ms. Doncourt, you've previously been sworn. Counsel, you may proceed.
Good morning, Ms. Doncourt.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, my name is Blake Doncourt. That's Doncourt.
What is your current occupation?
Yeah, I'm currently the Chief Executive Officer or CEO of Lush Fertilizer Incorporated.
Do you have a lot of experience in the fertilizer industry?
I would say so, yes. I've actually worked for Lush for over 20 years, and I've really built this company from the ground up.
So could you inform the jury of your relationship to today's case?
Yeah, I'm here because Lush and I are being wrongfully accused of ignoring a carcinogen in our fertilizer. Like I've said, I've built this company from the ground up, and I truly do care about our customers. I would never do anything to harm them.
Could you tell us a little bit about your product?
Yeah, so Lush Fertilizer is our flagship product, and it's known for being able to produce vibrant green grass for our customers.
What would you say makes Lush Fertilizer different from other fertilizers?
Yeah, so our fertilizer contains a compound called Drufo, and I would say that makes it rather unique.
Could you tell us a little bit more about Drufo?
Yeah, so Drufo is essentially a chemical that can help to reduce nitrogen buildup in the environment.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper expert testimony. This witness has not been tendered.
Response?
Your Honor, I understand that Ms. Doncourt is not an expert, but she does sell products containing Drufo. Therefore, she would know what it is at a very basic level.
Yeah, based on Rule 701, I believe the witness can testify about her personal knowledge and perceptions. So the objection will be overruled, but please limit it to your personal knowledge and perceptions.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Doncourt, could you continue just telling us a little bit about Drufo?
Yes, of course. So like I was saying, it's just a chemical that can help to reduce nitrogen buildup in the environment, which is incredibly important for protecting our planet. Environmentalism really is a core value for myself and Lush. And so it's important to us that our products help uphold these values. I do understand that Dakota believes that Drufo is what caused her cancer, but the studies conducted by Lush's team did not find any link between Drufo and cancer.
Have there ever been any studies that identified risks associated with Drufo?
No, there
Objection,
haven't.
Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
Response?
I'm actually asking the witness if she has any knowledge of these studies. So I'm just asking her if she has that knowledge.
Okay, objection overruled.
Ms. Doncourt, could you tell us again, do you have any knowledge or are you aware of any studies that have identified risks associated with Truffaut?
No, I'm not. Certainly not any valid ones. The only study that I know of that ever found a link between Truffaut and cancer is this one that Casey Rogers was discussing earlier. Honestly, it seems to me like the first time anybody's even heard of this study is in the current litigation.
Had you heard of Casey Rogers' study before this lawsuit?
No, I had not.
Ms. Doncourt, did Lush test Truffaut before putting it on the market?
Yes, absolutely. Lush's toxicology research and development labs did extensive testing and research on our products before even considering releasing them. Neither our labs nor the EPA found any specific risk to the consumers coming in contact with our fertilizer.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay, just the second bit about the EPA.
Oh, well, it's already been asked and answered, so you may go on with your next question.
Ms. Doncourt, as the CEO of Lush, are you aware of certain laws regarding putting warning labels on your packaging?
Yes, I am generally.
So when Lush put Lush fertilizer on the market, to your knowledge, was Lush complying with state and federal laws?
Yes, 100%. And under these state and federal laws, there was no need for us to put any kind of warning labels on our product. However, as I believe you saw earlier, we did include extensive user safety recommendations on the labels because, like I said, we do care deeply about our customer safety.
Ms. Doncourt, just moving on a little bit, what is your relationship with Carson Durst?
Yeah, so Carson was a rather close family friend of mine. He grew up with my son, Charlie. They played soccer together, ended up actually going to Arizona State University together. And I eventually actually gave Charlie a job, or my apologies, not Charlie, Carson a job out of college.
And what was Carson's job at Lush?
Yeah, so Carson began as an intern and then worked for the research and development team. His job was essentially to research any potential concerns surrounding Truffaut and our products and to immediately report those to management. So if Carson found absolutely anything, his job was to report these and bring them up to Lush's management.
Is Carson still working at Lush?
No, unfortunately, he is not. Carson's performance was so poor that we ended up having to fire him. It was pretty disappointing for me because, like I said, Carson was a close family friend, and I felt let down by the whole situation.
So let's go back to before you had to fire Carson. When Carson was working at Lush, did Carson ever express any concerns about your products?
No, not at all. It wasn't until we fired Carson that he suddenly began bringing up these concerns around Truffaut. Honestly, it feels to me like if Carson had any concerns, he should have immediately brought those to Lush's attention. That was his job after all.
Was Carson Durst the only researcher at Lush to assert these types of claims about your products?
Yes, he was the sole researcher to say anything like this. As you heard Dr. Devin Williams testify earlier, our labs did not find any risk associated with Truffaut.
Were there any kind of specific claims that Carson made?
Yeah, there was this one email that Carson seemed to come up with.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 4, which has already been entered into evidence.
Permission granted. Excuse me, permission granted.
If my co-counsel could just, okay, perfect. Thank you. Ms. Doncourt, is this the email you're referring to?
Yes, I believe it is.
And do you know what this email is?
No, I don't. I mean, I did hear Carson talk about it earlier, and I can see on the exhibit that I'm listed as a recipient, but I have never seen this email before.
And did anyone search Lush's computers during this investigation?
Yes, actually, the plaintiff's own lawyers conducted an extensive search of Lush's computers.
Did the plaintiff's lawyers find this email anywhere in Lush's computer system?
No, they found this email nowhere.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, let's say you had received this email. What would you have done?
Right. So if I had received an email at all like this, well, I could see that it states potential concerns around carcinogens. So if I had received anything like this, our products would not be on the market today, at least not without very extensive safety warning labels.
Thank you. My co-counsel can now stop screen sharing this exhibit. Ms. Doncourt, what did Carson do after you had to fire Carson?
Yeah, so Carson actually went to go work for Terra's Greenery, who is our biggest competitor. This was a direct violation of the non-compete and non-disclosure agreements that Carson signed while working with Lush.
Objection, Your Honor. Testifying to facts not in evidence.
Well, they're not in evidence yet, but if the witness has personal knowledge, the witness may testify about it. So you may proceed. Objection overruled.
Ms. Doncourt, could you continue telling us about what Carson did after he was fired?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, Carson violated these agreements and went to work for Terra's knowing exactly how we make our products. And I actually heard a little bit later that Terra is planning on releasing a product extremely similar to Lush's. To be quite honest, after this whole mess, I just don't feel like I can trust Carson anymore.
Ms. Doncourt, are you aware of a process called baking?
Yes, I am. Baking fertilizer can, in some cases, help to eliminate any potential risks. However, based on my team's analysis, it would not make any significant difference in Drufo's safety.
To reiterate, did Lush's research labs find any risks associated with the product?
No, our labs did not find any specific risk associated with the use of Lush fertilizer. We did very extensive testing, and if we'd found any kind of risk, our products would not be on the market today, or they would have very substantial warning labels. I mean, again, though, as you did see, we still put these user safety recommendations on the labels just to safeguard our customers' health and well-being.
Finally, Ms. Doncourt, do you believe that your product, Lush fertilizer, caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, I absolutely do not. Lush's labs did all of the necessary research and testing to ensure Drufo's safety. Lush would never do anything to intentionally harm our consumers. We care about the environment and we care about our customer safety very deeply. I truly do feel for Mr. Weir's, and it's very unfortunate he's in this situation, but I sleep just fine at night knowing that no Lush product contributed to his condition.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may proceed.
Hello, Ms. Doncourt, and good morning.
Good morning.
Now, let's start with the simple stuff. Your product contains a chemical called Drufo, correct?
Yes, it does.
And Drufo is supposed to limit environmental impact?
Right, it helps to reduce nitrogen buildup in the environment. It's very important for protecting our planet.
And you claim that this chemical has little risk?
Right, that's correct. It has little to no risk associated with it.
Now let's talk about your company. You are CEO of Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yeah, I've worked for this company for over 20 years, really building it from the ground up.
And Lush Fertilizer did some preliminary tests on Drufo?
Yes, that's correct.
Now you did hear Carson Durst's testimony today?
I heard Carson testify, yes.
And you heard Carson Durst testify to what a superior told him about keeping Drufo's risks in the walls?
I heard Carson testify to quite a lot of things, and honestly, I just don't agree with it. Like I said,
But Ms. Doncourt, if you could answer yes or no to this question, you heard Carson Durst testify to what a superior told him about keeping Drufo's risks in the walls, yes or no?
Of course, I heard Carson testify these things.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. Now, this superior wasn't you, obviously, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you claim that you never would have put Drufo on the market if you personally thought it was carcinogenic, yes?
Of course not. None of Lush wouldn't do that. We don't have any intention of ever harming our customers, and we wouldn't do anything that would put them in harm's way.
Ms. Doncourt, to clarify, you don't personally oversee testing, do you?
I don't oversee the testing, but as a member of upper management, it's my employee's job to report to me, and I need to have all of the necessary information.
Exactly, Ms. Doncourt. You rely on your personnel to bring things to your attention.
Yes, that is their job.
And so you are given reports on what happens in your company, correct?
That is correct. It's just like any company.
So hypothetically, things happen all the time in your company that you aren't personally made aware of.
I should be made aware of any sort of problems or concerns.
Well, Ms. Doncourt, to clarify, there are things that happen. For example, you don't know which of your employees had coffee this morning, correct?
All of this isn't in my witness statement.
Okay, you don't mention that you are personally made aware of the little things, correct?
I don't keep tabs on when my employees are drinking coffee.
Fair enough, Ms. Doncourt. So if your personnel don't see fit to bring something to your attention, you simply don't know about it.
I mean, it is their job to bring any significant concerns to my attention.
But Ms. Doncourt, if they don't, I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Doncourt, but we do have limited time today. If they don't, you don't know about it, correct?
Of course, if they don't give me the necessary information, then no, I don't.
Exactly. Let's move on. Now, you say that there aren't any valid studies showing Drufo is dangerous, correct?
There are no valid studies, no.
But there is a study from Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
Not a valid one, no.
Oh, well, you don't personally agree with this study.
I don't consider it to be valid. No, I don't.
So, Ms. Doncourt, you don't mention any scientific education, do you?
No, as I said, I'm the CEO of Lush Fertilizer. I oversee our operations.
So you also don't mention experience as a researcher?
I don't mention this specifically, though. I do have knowledge of the research done on Drufo.
In short, Ms. Doncourt, you are not a scientist.
That's not my job. No, like I've said, I'm the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Very well, Ms. Doncourt, let's move on. In your statement, you say that Drufo was below the threshold for immediate risk, correct?
Correct. Our labs did not identify any specific risk with the use of Drufo.
And you decided that the preliminary testing was sufficient to determine this, correct?
Right, because it didn't identify any kind of specific risk associated with the product.
Well, these tests were inconclusive, were they not?
I don't believe I mentioned that in my statement, no.
Then let's move on, Ms. Doncourt. So you did stop the intensive testing, correct?
Once again, after we performed the test that did not find it to be a risk to our consumers, that was sufficient, correct.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, however small you may think it to be, there was a risk, correct?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Well, specifically, Ms. Doncourt, there was a carcinogenic risk, correct?
No, there's no carcinogenic risk with the use of Lush Fertilizer.
Ms. Doncourt, do you have your witness statement in front of you?
I do. Let me just grab it 1 second.
Take your time. Now, if you could flip open to page 33 and take a look at 109, just the last three words of that line, and then go ahead and read along with me. Let me know when you're ready.
Page 33, you said?
Yes, line 109.
Yes.
Wonderful. Now, while baking the fertilizer would remove any risk that our fertilizer was carcinogenic, the baking process was just too expensive for the little risk it alleviated.
Right, and I'm actually happy to point you to.
Doesn't the phrase little risk it alleviated imply that there was some risk?
I wouldn't say that necessarily. As I was going to say earlier in my statement, I say there was little to no risk associated with the product.
Ms. Doncourt, at this moment in time.
Objection, Your Honor, I would request that opposing counsel let my witness talk. I understand that we are on a time limit.
Well, let me interrupt. I understand the objection, but the witness is giving somewhat lengthy responses. Sometimes they're just yes or no questions. So I would ask the witness to please limit responses. And you may proceed, counsel.
Ms. Doncourt, I will try to interrupt you as little as possible, but please do keep your answers concise. Now, isn't it true your scientists told you that baking the fertilizer would eliminate any carcinogenic risk, as we just read?
Yes, that's
and
correct.
so you say that baking would have been unnecessarily expensive.
It would have been overkill as our product was safe without it.
And so you knew there was risk involved with Drufo, however small you may deem it to be.
I wouldn't say that. Like I said, there was little to no risk.
Exactly, little risk. So you knew this risk was easily avoidable.
Again, like I've said, there was little to no risk. So there wasn't necessarily any kind of risk with the product.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, I'm going to ask you an incredibly simple question. Is yes or no? You did not bake the products. Yes or no?
We do not bake our products, no.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I have no further questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Ms. Doncourt, I just want to make this clear for everyone. Was there risk associated with your product?
No, like I've said, there was very, very minimal to absolutely no risk associated with our product. Our labs found no specific carcinogenic risk with the use of Drufo.
Why didn't you bake your fertilizer?
We chose not to bake our fertilizer because of this, because there was no significant risk or any risk, and it would just have been overkill.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. A very brief one, if I may.
You may proceed.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, you keep conflating the idea of little risk with no risk, but to clarify, in your statement on the line we just read, you use the phrase little risk, yes or no?
In addition to the phrase little to no risk, correct.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Doncourt, you are excused. And does the defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so it's time for closing arguments, but let's take about 30 seconds and get organized. Everybody can take a breath, and in about 30 seconds, we'll start with closing arguments.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, is each side ready to proceed with closings?
Yes, Your Honor.
And during closing arguments, we'll have the scoring panelists have their videos on, so you have someone to speak to. And each side gets 5 minutes for closing. Does the plaintiff want to reserve ahead of time any time for rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. I imagine the amount will be around 45 seconds, but it does vary depending on how quickly I end up talking.
Okay, would you prefer to just reserve any time you have left, or do you want to
We're
specify?
all right with, if you are all right with that, yes, I would prefer to just reserve any remaining time for rebuttal.
Okay, we'll do it that way. You may proceed with closing argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. How would you go about turning a little green leaf into gold? You couldn't, not without crushing the laws of nature. Lush Fertilizer uses their passion for the green environment to make their gold. And in doing so, they have crushed the life of Dakota Weirs, and without action, they will continue to crush the lives of countless others. Of course, you cannot base your decisions on emotion. Pursuant to jury instruction number 1, we, the plaintiff, have the burden of proof today and must prove our case by a preponderance of the evidence, simply meaning to prove something is more probably true than not. Today, we were tasked with proving the negligence of Lush Fertilizer when they allowed their product Drufo to harm Mr. Dakota Weirs. We needed to demonstrate this negligence to you pursuant to jury instruction number 2 by showing you that 1, Lush manufactured Drufo. 2, they failed to reasonably prevent risk to those using the product in the expected manner. 3, that Mr. Weirs used Drufo in that expected manner. And 4, that Mr. Weirs has damages caused by Drufo. Now let's just walk through these elements one at a time. Number 1, I believe there's no dispute as to the fact that Lush manufactured Drufo. Now number 2, Lush did complete some initial testing. However, none of the defense witnesses here today can actually tell you about that process. Carson Durst was there though, and he shared with you that at the culmination of that testing, concerns still existed regarding Drufo's link to cancers, such as non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and that concern was supposed to be kept within the walls. Nevertheless, a report of Drufo's safety was drawn up, and Drufo was sold to the public. And in the years following, the only testing done by Lush pertained to Drufo's environmental impact, not its impact on those who use it. Lush chose not to bake the fertilizer. They chose not to continue testing. They chose to purge their guilt through extensive donations, all in the name of this green pretense, masking their obsession with gold. And not just that, Lush failed to properly warn users of the effects of Drufo as dictated by jury instruction number 3. You've seen Exhibit 1, the user recommendation label. You heard Dr. Rogers explain that a general fertilizer label giving general fertilizer recommendations does not adequately warn users of the specific effects of Drufo. Now, number 3, we all agree that Dakota Weirs used the product Drufo. However, if Lush failed to properly test their products and to properly warn users, then there can be no expected manner in which Drufo was ever safe to use. Number 4, Drufo causes cancer. I'd like you all to remember that Dr. Williams wasn't present for the initial Drufo testing and has far more to say about Drufo's environmental impact than its safety. Skylar Weirs also never worked with Drufo themselves and got their information from the very sites that wanted Drufo to do well. Dr. Rogers is the only true expert in this case who includes a specific Drufo-related study in her statement. Today, she explained to you that Mr. Weirs' lymphoma is more probably than not a product of his exposure to Drufo, citing specific evidence from her study. And of course, let us not forget the damages themselves. I mean, Dakota Weirs was headed to college, to Juilliard, to a new life. Not anymore. Mr. Weirs may never be able to return to that previous life, so he deserves compensation from the company that stole his world, his future. Today, the plaintiff has proven all 4 elements of negligence, and in accordance with jury instruction number 2, we ask that you find Lush Fertilizer liable for this negligence. And pursuant to Judge Staub's pre-trial ruling, the plaintiff must argue a monetary amount for Mr. Weirs' non-economic damages. Therefore, we ask that Mr. Weirs be compensated for his pain and lost future, consistent with his testimony, in the amount of $21.9 million. That is $1,000 a day for the 60 years that would have been his life. Members of the jury, don't allow Lush Fertilizer to escape the consequences of attempting to turn green into gold. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Closing argument for the defense. You may proceed.
Members of the jury, opposing counsel just told you that we are here today because Lush wanted to turn green leaves into gold. Opposing counsel just told you that we are here today because Lush would stop at nothing to make this gold. But the truth is that we are here today because Mr. Dakota Weirs would stop at nothing to make his own gold. Mr. Weirs saw a TV clip about Lush Fertilizer Incorporated and found the perfect way to become his own King Midas and turn those leaves into gold. Members of the jury, I need to make this clear. There is a statutory cap on non-economic damages in the state of Colorado. Plaintiffs grabbed for gold, $21.9 million, is dramatically in excess of the statutory cap. Plaintiff is using the wrong science and now suing the wrong defendant. It is time for the right answer. Wrong science, wrong defendant, right answer. Let's take a look at the science that opposing counsel presented today. Now, in an effort to prove that a chemical called Drufo caused Mr. Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, plaintiff is relying on 2 studies. First, a study conducted by Casey Rogers, a study that Rogers herself testified was inconclusive. And second, a study conducted on rats. But rats are very different than humans, and an earlier study on the same compound within Drufo demonstrated that Drufo is not carcinogenic at all. The only other science that opposing counsel presented today was an email that Carson Durst, a disgruntled ex-employee of Lush, claims to have received. Now, this alleged email seemed to state that Drufo could be carcinogenic, but no one else has ever seen this email. So we have a study with inconclusive results, a study conducted on rats instead of humans, whose results are also unclear, and an email that no one else has ever seen? That's the wrong science, members of the jury. But my co-counsel and I called witnesses to the stand that presented the right science. You heard from Dr. Devin Williams. And yes, Dr. Devin Williams did talk about Drufo's environmental benefits. But Dr. Devin Williams also testified that her research labs found no evidence that Drufo could cause cancer. Skylar Weirs testified that in her extensive research, she has never come across a single credible study that links Drufo to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So let's use the right science in the development of Drufo. Opposing counsel, however, is arguing that Lush ignored that science because the company did not make its fertilizer and therefore did not eliminate all reasonable risk. But members of the jury, you heard today that Lush did not need to bake its fertilizer for the simple reason that it was not necessary. And I need to make it clear that eliminating all reasonable risk does not mean eliminating 100% of risk. Not only is plaintiff using the wrong science, but he is now suing the wrong defendant. We do not know who the party or parties at fault are, but they are not Lush Fertilizer. You heard Mr. Weirs himself testify that he used multiple different products at his job. A different product could easily be responsible. And ladies and gentlemen, it has not been proven today that a fertilizer is what caused Mr. Weir's illness. Something else entirely could be at fault. Wrong science, wrong defendant. Let's talk about the right answer that you jury members must now give. Today, opposing counsel failed to meet their burden to prove each element of negligence by preponderance of the evidence. Therefore, your verdict must be for the defendant, because the evidence today showed that Lush exercised reasonable care to prevent its product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm. However, if you do find that Mr. Dakota Weirs suffered damages as a result of using this product, you must consider his own negligence, which was the direct and proximate cause of 100% of any damages. Now, it is terrible that Mr. Weirs is living with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but Lush Fertilizer did not cause this cancer. You must now give the right answer. We ask you to find Lush not liable for negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Rebuttal closing by the plaintiff. And before you begin, let me ask the timekeeper, how much time is remaining?
Your Honor, Mix Lee Kenny has 39 seconds remaining for a rebuttal.
Okay, counsel, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense loves the terms right and wrong science, but I would like all of you to think about what science you exactly heard from the defense today. Yes, Skylar Weirs' extensive research on Lush's very own websites. Dr. Devin Williams didn't deign to mention the specifics of any of these studies the defense so desperately relies on. In fact, they're trying to accuse a young man with cancer of being greedy. Members of the jury, please look at the true science presented to you by the plaintiff today and find Lush Fertilizer liable. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Thanks to all of you for very good presentations. That concludes the trial now, and the case will be submitted to the jury for deliberation. The scoring panelists will now complete their scoring sheets and communicate them to our courtroom monitor, and we will await that. And then when that is done, we'll come back and the panelists each get to give a couple of minutes feedback, and I get to give a couple minutes feedback. So we'll have the scoring panelists do their scoring now, and everyone can relax. And you can turn your cameras on or not. That's up to you.
Your Honor, while we are waiting here, are we permitted to talk a little bit to the other team? Maybe offer some congrats?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay, then, you guys
Sorry,
did great.
real fast.
So fun.
Before you jump into it, just so that you guys can easily slide through things, we have been dismissed, so you guys are good to go throughout whatever else you have to say.
Oh, you mean our scoring is all done?
That is correct.
Okay, let's let the participants say what they wanted to say, and then we'll do the feedback.
Okay, then. I just wanted to say, I didn't work with all of you, but to the two people I did work with, Emma and Saffron, you guys were awesome. This was so fun. And yeah, it was just really, really exciting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, great job to you guys also.
Okay. Scoring panelists, are you ready for some feedback? Ms. Hunter, would you be willing to start?
Sure, always. Well, I am just really glad I don't come across you guys in court, any of you. You're excellent. I'm Charlene Hunter. I am primarily family law, but also do landlord tenant and estate stuff. And I am newly a coach of a brand new team at the Denver Waldorf School. And we weren't ready to compete this year, but hopefully you have a lot to teach us. We're going to watch some of the competitions this next week in school. So we have a lot to learn from all of you. So thank you for that. At this point, you all, I'm not going to give specifics. You've got some great signaling going on, some great open-ended questions. Your witnesses know their stuff. Clearly, we're not reading from their notes, and you all had your parts down. It was very clear you were you knew what you were talking about. I want to tell you, this didn't come into my scoring, but I do appreciate Team Daryl's sensitivity to gender references. And I just give you this, my class, when I was starting with them and teaching my mock trial team things, and I said something like, you start out with, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and I instantly got 3 hands up that said, what if you weren't a lady or a gentleman in the jury? So my class at the Denver Waldorf School has made me more aware of those references, and I appreciate the sensitivity to that with the teams today. So great job, all of you.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan, would you be willing to go next?
Yes, my name's Holly Ryan. I'm a Colorado real estate attorney. I retired and then got called back by Governor Polis to be the Jefferson County Public Trustee. And we do foreclosure, so it fits right in with real estate law. I have to say, I've been scoring and presiding over these types of competitions for probably 13 to 15 years. I love it. I have to say that your 2 teams with your witnesses are the best performances I've probably ever seen. They knew their information, they weren't reading. Excellent job for your witnesses. Counsels were good. Great job. I did notice that a lot of the attorneys on both teams struggled with yes/no questions on cross-examination. It's really difficult to try to hone in on a specific question that limits the witness to a yes/no answer without them being able to say, well, maybe, or yes, but, or no, but. But excellent job. I am so proud of both of these teams. You were both wonderful. It was a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klein?
Hi, everyone. Harry Klein. I'm a in-house counsel with Cisco Systems, been there for 20 years and did litigation work for about 10 years before that. I'll echo what my other scoring panelists said. You guys were phenomenal, the best I've seen. And I just applaud the attorneys, the witnesses. You guys were very professional. I'll point out a couple of things that I thought were really good and a couple of suggestions that I have. But if I don't mention your name, it's not because you didn't do good or you did particularly bad. It's just a few things that I found particularly effective that you may want to take away and consider as you go forward. The openings were both really strong. You focused on a theme and you stuck to it, and it anchored a juror's mind. The green to gold, the greed theory is a really good one. Right science versus wrong science. I think that's really good too. It was interesting though, in the closings, you both got a little bit caught by, maybe another way to look at that. Who is really looking for the gold versus, was there any science on the other side? So I think you both did a good job of anchoring the theme, but then just be careful because it can come back to haunt you later on. The direct examinations I thought were really good. You guys were conversational. You listened really well. You made sure the witnesses were picking up on where you were trying to take them without leading questions, which you can't do. Morgan, I loved the way that you and the witness framed the damages, right? You have to put it into some kind of reasonable relationship. And to do that, how much would you pay not to be in pain for, on a daily basis? That's one way to get it out there, because it's a big number and a lot of jurors would tend to look at that and go, wow, that's really huge, but that's a good way to relate to it. The cross-examinations I thought were really good. I agree that the yes/no questions are hard to keep a witness limited to, but I thought everyone did a really good job of controlling the witness to the best that they could. One thing I would point out, Lydia, you have a tendency to answer your question with a yes. Change that to a, is that correct? Because sometimes you would ask a negative question, you would say, well, you never did this, yes? And that makes it hard to understand, or should the answer be yes, I never did that, or no, I never did that? It's a little bit confusing, so I'd just be a little careful with that. Also, let's see. Lee, I thought your style is really very, very likable, even when you're doing something very aggressive to on a cross-examination to a witness. You're too likable to get mad at for asking tough questions. And that's really hard to do in a cross-examination. So I applaud you for that. I thought both attorneys who took the witness on voir dire, I thought did a really good job. And one thing you did effectively, it's not reasonable to suggest that the witness not be allowed to testify at all. So you limited it to a certain type of testimony. And I thought that was a really effective way to do that. It doesn't look like you're overstepping. You're just trying to be reasonable in what they have expertise on. I thought that was really good. Last thing. Oh, Kate, as a witness, this is my third time to listen to this case. You're the first person who actually pointed out that there's another finger to point to here, and that is the landscaping company. I love you brought that out. I thought that was something I've been waiting to hear. It's like, well, why did they let a 14-year-old, out there doing all of this? They should have been looking after their workers as well. So I thought that was really good. Closings were really good, and the rebuttal Lee gave, I thought was good. Right science versus wrong science. No, there was no science on the other side. Great job, everyone.
Yeah, I agree with that. And my overall impression is it was like listening to good music.
Yes.
Everybody was clean and tight. You were precise and to the point. You did sophisticated things with examinations, voir dire, cross-examination, and objections with regard to experts. That was all very good and very sophisticated. Your civility and professionalism was top-notch, and that's very important. A lot of objections and a lot of squabbling makes for fun TV, but it doesn't make for a good trial. And in my experience, jurors really appreciate it when they can just hear the evidence presented in a clean, professional manner rather than listening to squabbling. So you were very, very good that way. And congratulating each other at the end is also a very good thing. Some of my best friends are opposing counsel. And that civility, that professionalism is very important. So you should be applauded for that as well as your great performances today. So thank you very much. Thanks to all the scoring panelists. Thanks to all the participants, the witnesses, the timekeepers. I thought everything went very well. So we wish you the best. Take care. And let me check with the courtroom monitor and make sure that we are free to go.
And Judge Pratt, I think you have your record keeping time for a session intact.
You're on a courtroom.
For the participants, when we get together ahead of time, they say, well, you want to make sure you keep things moving, and So I asked yesterday, I said, well, can you give us an estimate? Because I felt like our first session went, I felt like we we're really kind of moving fast, but maybe we weren't. And they said, no, you did very good. You were one of the first ones to finish. But I really have to give credit to the efficiency with which we did this to the teams. I mean, that wasn't me. There wasn't squabbling, there wasn't fighting. That was the teams. Like I said, it was clean and tight, and it was like good music. So thank you.
Very good job.
Guys, and congrats to Team Daryl.
Yeah, amazing job. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We really loved
Good.
going with you.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys.